I think it's well worth reflecting on what the upcoming 20th Party Conference of the Chinese Communist Party will stand for. And I do believe that 3 results of that meeting are pretty much a foregone conclusion. 1, Xi Jinping, China's Communist Party emperor, will continue centralizing absolutely all political power that he can get his whole hand on. Second, the totalitarian claim that the Chinese Communist Party leads, as they say, everything in China, that they control every aspect of China's political, economic, cultural, religious, and academic and private life, will also be enhanced. And third, the aggressive foreign policy that he has developed over the last 10 years, more aggressive than that by his predecessors, with land grabbing in the South China Sea, with the border conflict with India, with aggression against Japan over the Senkaku Islands, with aggressive behavior in particular against Taiwan, with coercive policies against, for instance, Australia, Lithuania, or Sweden. All that will continue. In Europe's public, Xi Jinping's tenure has had an impact. 10 years ago, many Europeans still had a relatively positive image of the People's Republic of China. Just 1 or 2 days ago, Pew, an international polling organization, published new figures, and those figures show that all around Europe, that has been inverted. Now there are very few people in all of the European countries, with very few exceptions like Hungary, very few people that have any trust at all in the PRC, and many people that really see China, Xi Jinping's China, as a risk, or I should say a threat. And that is also expressed in NATO's new strategy that they accepted and agreed upon in Madrid a couple of weeks ago. The major factors that motivated this change of mind have been Hong Kong, Xinjiang, about which we just heard, and also Taiwan. I'm not saying that everybody around Europe is singing from the same hymn sheet. There are business leaders, not all, but some business leaders from some multinationals that still would want to continue just doing business and ignoring human rights and ignoring politics. But even in the business community, there is an increasing number of actors that realize, and the president of Germany's Federation of Industry has said so, that there are red lines, that there are ethical lines that have to be drawn also when German investors are active in China. The European Parliament has been playing a very active role in that regard, and we have indeed also highlighted the fate of Ilham Tohti by awarding him our Sakharov Prize in 2019. And we continue also mentioning him in our resolutions that we pass. But I would say it's also encouraging that we are not alone as a European Parliament. There is a broader rethinking among member states and in the Commission. That rethinking is basically focusing on the fact that, as was declared in the Strategic Outlook of March 2019, China is indeed a systemic rival for the EU. And when we look at the developments more recently over recent years, we can only conclude that we are deeply in rivalry territory. That assessment has been bolstered also by persistent revelations about China's human rights atrocities in Xinjiang in particular, but also in other parts of the country. And I would applaud the former High Commissioner of the United Nations for Human Rights, Mrs. Bachelet, that she finally, against very tough Chinese pressure, dared to publish her report, which mentioned that there are crimes against humanity being committed in China, in particular in Xinjiang. Now, I think it would be a common task for the international community to make sure that these issues will be tabled in the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations, and that China's efforts to smother such a debate will be futile. I also believe that we should impose new sanctions on those that perpetrate these crimes against humanity. And I believe, and this is a more general point, and I conclude with this, that there is a responsibility to let the leaders in Beijing, to let the leaders of the CCP know very clear, in no uncertain terms, that we will do whatever we can effectively contribute to push back against their domestically extremely oppressive and internationally extremely aggressive agenda. And in particular, when they pursue a course of aggression against Taiwan, we have to impress on them that this would not be tolerated. It would come with a very high cost for the PRC itself. So I believe that there still might be here and there, wherever it's possible, opportunities for dialogue, but dialogue without clear deterrence will never work. And we need to develop a policy of deterrence also vis-a-vis a course of aggression and adventurism. And the fact that the leaders in Beijing and Xi Jinping himself struck a deal of unlimited friendship with the aggressor against Ukraine, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, underscores what I have in mind. This must not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear words, which I think have been listened to extremely carefully in this room and also with many people watching online. Herr Bütikofer, my question to you is, you use this interesting phrase, we are deeply in rivalrous territory with China. I think that's a very interesting phrase. And my question is, with what happened with Russia, the gas disaster that Germany is experiencing in its relations with Russia, how are we actually going to extricate ourselves or safely, and I really emphasize the word safe, safely for ourselves, so democracies manage the economic dependencies that we have with China. How are we actually going to do this now? And I realize it's a big question, but I think it's a pressing question. I'd love to hear just maybe two or 3 minutes from you about how to do that, or what you think this is even about, and how we could even begin to address the issue.
Thank you. That's indeed a core issue. And let me start by making one point that I feel is not made often enough. The CCP has been pretty successful with its propaganda that it will be successful historically, regardless. Too many people have bought the narrative that many other actors, including in Europe, only have one choice, whether they will acknowledge Chinese demands today, or whether they will have to acknowledge and have to accept Chinese demands tomorrow. There is this narrative of an unresistible rise of China, and this claim by Xi Jinping that China will move to the center of international relations. I don't buy that propaganda. And it has been used by some to make shallow excuses for not trying to rid ourselves of the dependencies that we have allowed to develop. And that's why I also oppose this. I think we should indeed learn our lesson from what has happened on the basis of our fossil fuel dependency towards Russia. Our dependencies vis-a-vis China are much broader, go much deeper, are much more risky, and we cannot forget the lesson that Putin's aggressive behavior told us. Some people say we cannot take on China as long as we still have this Russian aggression on our hands. I think the opposite is true. These totalitarian dictators, Putin and Xi Jinping, are like Siamese twins, joined at the hip. If we allow one of them to succeed, that strengthens also the other. That is one theater, and we have to form an alliance of like-minded countries. And I think there are many countries that have understood that the kind of world order that Xi Jinping and Putin are pursuing would deny agency to smaller countries, to less powerful countries. And that's why they certainly do not have an interest in falling victim to that. In order to be able to move, we have ourselves to reduce the dependencies, and that means redirecting our supply chains, redirecting our technological policies, avoiding the practice that has often enough, unfortunately, been the case, that we feed into even the technological development of the PLA because we don't take care of their efforts to exploit our academic research, for instance. I believe that increasingly there is a consensus between the human rights community and the national security community and big parts of the business community, that we have to wean ourselves of the Chinese dependency. This is not going to happen in one day. You cannot turn around on a heel, but you have to develop a strategy for that, and that has to be an all of society effort. And in that context, we also have to call out those people that are the stooges of Beijing, those people that play on behalf of Beijing, like some former ministers from different parties. I'm not naming the names here, but you know who I have in sight. And I believe this is a very fundamental challenge. And what our foreign minister has been demonstrating, and I'm very grateful for that, is that a policy that would be adequate to the challenge cannot play our values against our interests. Our values are part of our interests. Defending the democratic values, the human rights, the rule of law, that is also part of our interest in that systemic competition, and everybody has to play along. I recently heard somebody from industry who was asked, how would industry want to see China relations develop? And the man answered, I'm not answering the question, because the real question is, how will industry have to respond to the challenges by democratic society in countering Chinese policy? And I think he was right.